Just saying hello before we speak again. Good to see you so much. Yeah,
to try to make the striving and the home.
Yeah.
Second house.
Good to see you.
Mama, ya, la da da, mama, ya, da da da,
It's going to be a Zoom. I didn't realize you actually. Yeah, I'm very excited.
Sorry?
Not yet.
What's on the surface is not always what it is. This is the thing on the top. L'chaim. As we all know, the Frierdiker Rebbe, from already very young age, Frierdiker Rebbe's life was given over to Inyanim Tziburim, Inyanim Klalim, Mesirus Nefesh. At a very young age of 15 years old, the Frierdiker Rebbe already was, by his father, appointed to be his personal secretary and to go on different missions. As we know the different stories of him going into the place of the most of certain death in many cases, and yet the Frierdiker Rebbe went on Mesirus Nefesh. The Frierdiker Rebbe's life was all about Mesirus Nefesh. And before that, the Frierdiker Rebbe demanded this from his Chassidim. The Frierdiker Rebbe didn't just hold it on to himself. The Frierdiker Rebbe demanded this from his Chassidim. I heard recently, I don't know where exactly the source, I'm sure others know the source, that the Belza, the Rabbanim from Belza said, as when it comes to the Mesirus Nefesh, we can all learn from the Alazan Talmidim or something to that extent of the Lubavitch Rebbe, huh? It's in Kervis Lubavitch. In other words, the Frierdiker Rebbe personified to the world what Mesirus Nefesh is all about. One of the more obvious elements of the Mesirus Nefesh was, as we said before, when communism took hold, so there was a lot of uncertainty as to where the country was going to go. But one of the things the communists were very keen on was to destroy any elements of religion, period. They try to get rid of the calendar and change the calendar. And as we said, one of the things that happened is that in the communities where you had the Rabbanim, who basically were the whole community ran by the Rav of the community, they left their positions, they left their posts. And there's letters of the Frierdiker Rebbe where you could see that the Frierdiker Rebbe was astonished that how could a Rav just leave his position like that he was in a position to lead a community, and now it's just, And the Frierdiker Rebbe therefore took it upon himself to make sure that these communities had Rabbanim, as we said before, Shachtim, etc. But in many ways, it was many of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Chassidim that paid the ultimate price, that they actually Mesirus Nefesh B'Poel, that it came to a point where they actually were Mesirus Nefesh Mamish. The Rebbe asks a question in the Sikha. The Rebbe asks that Yud Beis Tammuz, Frierdiker Rebbe, and Frierdiker Rebbe got the news. It was like 5 Maimorim that Frierdiker Rebbe said in that time. Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, and the Shabbos. And Yud Beis Tammuz, after that, the Frierdiker Rebbe said the Maimer Vavayish Hoyli Be'ezri, which L'chura is, the Rebbe asks, L'chura is the Indian of the future promise that the Eibush is going to take care of us. And the next day and the following, the Frierdiker Rebbe said the Maimer Baruch HaGeulah Chayim Tevis, that the Frierdiker Rebbe acknowledged about the HaGeulah. So the Rebbe says that seemingly it should have been the other way around. First, you acknowledge and thank the Eibishter for the saving, which is what HaGeulah is, and then you talk about the future. Why is it that it was done the other way around? So the Rebbe says something there very, very interesting. The Rebbe says that really the biggest miracle of the whole story of Yud Beis and Gimel Tammuz wasn't that the Frierdiker Rebbe was freed. It was the fact that the people that were involved in getting him freed, nothing happened to them. That was the miracle. That you had people, the Rebbe himself was involved, obviously the Beis Harav and many other Chassidim, And even non-Jews and non-religious Jews and non-Jews were involved. And you're dealing with a government that would had no problem with killing anybody. And yet not one person was injured or had any negative effect from being involved in this situation. Says the Rebbe, that was the miracle. So the Rebbe the Rebbe says that, without getting into the whole depth of the Sikha, but the Rebbe there says that Frierdiker Rebbe was acknowledging that one could ask the question, where did the real salvation come from? Where did the real Yeshua come from? Was it through the means of these individuals that were able to influence, whether it was different governments in Europe and America, and put pressure on the Russians? Or was it, obviously the Eibishter? And therefore, the Frierdiker Rebbe wanted to make it clear, as he explains in that Maimed, that everything came from Emitis Emotzi, everything was the Eibishter. That the whole miracle came only from the Eibishter. Which, in other words, means not that we're not acknowledging that other people were involved, but the Rebbe says the fact that the Eibishter was the one that was involved in this process, like you have by Yitzias Mitzrayim, V'nigla Aleim Kvei Hashem, that the Eibishter himself took them out of Mitzrayim. And when you have the revelation of Amitas Himatzui, at that point, for sure, these people that were just doing their job, Al Pi Teva, they shouldn't have been able to be hurt. So in other words, what the Rebbe there says is that they weren't really going on Mesidas Nefesh. Because they were in the Teva that they were living in, the fact that the Eibishter, the fact that there was a revelation of Amitas Himatzui, the ultimate truth of the world, which is that the Eibishter runs the world, and Eidei Mulvada, so these people couldn't be hurt, couldn't be damaged. It's on the other end, you have a Sikh of the Rebbe where the Rebbe talks about by Purim. The Rebbe asks the question, the Gemara asks the question, why did the Yidden deserve to be annihilated on Purim in the days of Hashverish? What Aveda did they do already that they deserve to be completely annihilated? So the Gemara goes through one suggestion that they ate from the Sudas HaChasherish. But the Gemara says that's enough for the people in Shushan. What about for the rest? The Gemara says they bowed down to the Nebuchadnezzar, Salem, whatever it is. But the Rebbe says that the Gemara doesn't reject the fact that they ate from the Sudas HaChasherish, and the Rebbe therefore says that must have been the main reason why they deserve to be that Lash Miladig Labi is Kola Yehudim. And the Rebbe there asks the question, is the punishment, does it match up to the crime? Or does the crime match up to the punishment? Because they ate from the Sudav HaChashverish, that's why they deserve to be completely annihilated? And the Rebbe says, it wasn't a punishment. It was a natural consequence. It was a natural reaction. Parenthetically, B'chlal, Rebbe Yedua, when it comes to educating or parenting, sometimes we think we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we trying to educate? Are we trying to empower our students? Are we trying to empower our children? Or are we trying to punish them? Are we giving them a consequence through which they're learning from something? Or just because we feel a certain need to be in control, so we're giving them a punishment? So the Rebbe says, Eibishter didn't punish you. It wasn't a punishment. You didn't listen to me, so therefore I'm going to annihilate you. Rather, the Rebbe says that the Yidden are kisva achas, they're a single sheep amongst Shiru Zevim, as the Medrash says, 70 wolves, that al pi teva, the way the world is set up is that the Yidden shouldn't exist. If not for the special Shmira Miyuchedes, special protection that Eibishter gives the Yidden, otherwise the Yidden shouldn't be existing. So all the Yidden had to do was tell the Eibishter, we don't need your protection. We'll sign up for Achashverish's protection. We need Donald Trump to win the elections. We don't need it. We're satisfied with that achateva. Right? Says the Eibishter, okay. You don't want the Shmira Miyuchedes. You don't want the Shmira Miyuchedes. I'm sorry for disappointing the Trump fans in the crowd. But you don't want the Shmira Miyuchedes, so says the Eibishter, okay. And therefore, the result, the consequences were that there could be a Gzeira, not because the Gzeira was a punishment, because it was a natural consequence. So al derech zeh, similarly, the other way around, the Rebbe says that when it came to from the arrest of the Frierdiker Rebbe in Sivan, all the way through the period of time of the debate of Gimel Tammuz, It wasn't pshat that the Yidden and the people that were involved in the process were going on Mesiras Nefesh. Was that they were doing something against the nature, that there was a big miracle that they survived. When you have the revelation of Einay Mulvate, of course you're going to survive. You just become shluchim. But the Rebbe there explains something very, very important in this process. There's two ways that you could be doing the mission in this world. There's two ways that you could be a shliach. There's two ways you could go on your mission in this world. One way is where you're doing it for yourself. What does it mean for yourself? The Rebbe mentions this in a different sikha. The Rebbe asks a question that if you look in the letter, the Frierdiker writes that in the Maimorim of Rosh Hashanah, he mentioned about the idea of Hashgacha Pratis, the Chiddush of Hashgacha Pratis Baal Shem Tov, and he says with that he was able to survive the Yisurim, the pain and all that of being in prison. So the Rebbe goes through a whole series of questions he doesn't understand. What's the connection to Dafka, the Hashgacha Pratis of the Baal Shem Tov, the Chiddush of the Hashgacha Pratis Baal Shem Tov? For those of you who know, right, the Baal Shem Tov was revolutionized our approach of Hashgacha Pratis. If you look in the Rishonim, the idea of Hashgacha Pratis, let's take the Rambam, there's Hashgachas Hamin, that every species is going to, there's Hashgacha on the general min, and by the Yidden there may be a little bit more of a special Hashgacha. The Ramban says that on certain tzaddikim there's more of Hashgacha, but this idea of Hashgacha Pratis, even to the extent as that even the leaf that falls off the tree is falling off exactly, and all that, the Rishonim didn't hold of that. The Baal Shem Tov came along and said that not only by man is there a special Hashgacha Pratis, but even on the Daimon Sameach Chai, in every level of creation, every aspect of creation, there's a special Hashgacha Pratis. So the Rebbe asks, it doesn't sound, what's the connection between knowing about that, and that's why he didn't suffer, feel the pain, or he's able to handle the pain. But more than that, the Rebbe asks, he says, he doesn't understand why the Frierdiker Rebbe felt like there was pain. He says, we know Rabbi Akiva, when it came to Rabbi Akiva's time for Mesiras Nefesh, he was very excited. He didn't feel the pain. For him, he was thinking about Masay Yavi Biyadi Vakamena. Right? When will I able to do this, says the Gemara in Barachas. So he says that Rabbi Akiva was excited about it. And now you're complaining? To be Moshe Nefesh, that should be the greatest chus. And the Rebbe goes through a series of explanations. But the Rebbe there says that the idea of Avram Avinu, there's a difference between Rabbi Akiva and Avram Avinu's Mesiras Nefesh. Rabbi Akiva's Mesiras Nefesh was a sense of self-fulfillment. It wasn't that Rabbi Akiva thought he was doing something for himself, right? He wasn't doing Mesiras Nefesh because he thought it was a good idea, for his self-growth, or self-esteem, exactly. That's not why he did it. He believed in it because of the fact that he knew that the Eibishter, this is the best way to connect to the Eibishter. But in many ways, it was similar to Nadav ben Avihu, that they wanted to come close. They wanted to kalois hanefesh. However, by Avram Avinu, that wasn't his objective. His objective was to be Megala, to reveal Elokus in the world. He set up shop. He wanted to be there, even to when he was sick. He wanted that there should be what? There should be guests that he could tell them. He wanted that there should be a spreading of Elokus in the world. And just parenthetically to this point, in a different place that Rebbe speaks about, the question that Ramban asks, you don't find anything about Avram Avinu until Parshas Lech Lecha. Right? Lech Lecha comes along, and all of a sudden there's Vayemer. Lech Lecha, who's this Avram that we're talking about? He's 75 or 70 years old, different shittas, whatever, however old he was. Who is he? There's a whole story of Orkastim. We don't know anything about this. So the Rebbe says, it's very simple. Avram Avinu, before the Eibusher told him Lech Lecha, he was doing something from himself. He discovered a God. He discovered that there's one true God, that there's Hikaras Beire, as the Rambam says. He recognized that there's an Eibusher, so he got excited. Guess what? When you come up with a great idea, you also get excited and spread it to everybody. It may not be selfish, it may not be self-driven from a negative place, but it's not coming from the Eibusher. It's not you doing it for the Eibusher. But when the Eibusher then tells you now, Lech Lecha Ma'artzecha, get out of your comfort zone and now do it, that's a whole different story already. Now you become Avram Avinu. Avram Oyavi. Echot Avram. Now you become into a different darga. So Avraham Avinu wasn't thinking about himself at all. As the Rambam writes in Hilchos Tshuva, that by Avraham there's different dargos in Avos Hashem. There's different levels of loving the Eibishter. Loving the Eibishter doesn't necessarily mean that you have a warm feeling inside. Avos Hashem, especially the way the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that the baseline of Avos Hashem is Abba HaMevi L'dei Maisa, right? The Iker is what? That you should do action. In other words, the Ava, the love, is a motivator. So Alter Rebbe says in Perek Daled that if you do not have Ava V'Yira, Ein Boi Kiyum, there's no Kiyum to your mitzvahs. In other words, in any relationship, you have to have a motivator to be involved in that relationship. Otherwise, it's empty. The action is empty. It doesn't have a Kiyum. So in our relationship with the Eibishter, which our relationship with the Eibishter is the same parallels in the sense that just like the Eibishter created that we sense a relationship the way it is between Bein Adam L'Chaved is the same way Bein Adam L'Amokim, as we Shira Shirim Mishkeidos HaKadoshim tells us that relationship is that we need to have a certain motivator, a certain drive in Ava. But there's many levels in Avos Hashem. Many, many levels. The Rambam lays out 3 levels. There's a whole Sichot Rebbe on that itself. So we know there's a Sichot Rebbe on everything. But the Rambam there says that Avraham Avinu's Avodah was Oisa Emes Mipnei Shu Emes. There was nothing about himself involved. He came to a point where it was totally because this was the truth. It wasn't I'm doing it because I want to come closer to Hashem. I want to do it because I want to, it's like in the human relationship, there's times, let's say you do something for your spouse and your spouse realizes the reason you're doing it is because you want to make them happy. So fine, that may be a nice thing, maybe a good thing, but it doesn't feel as genuine as if you just do it on some level because that person wants you to. Instead of you wanting to feel closer, that you made them happy, the fact is that you did it because they wanted you to do it on some levels even higher. But that's the difference between Avodah V'Tzadik and Avodah V'Baal Tshuva, whatever. About Tshuva, the Rebbe says, in my Marim Tashing Yudbeis, that about Tshuva's Avodah is much deeper because he's fighting himself. To have a relationship with someone that you like is not a chiddush. To be involved in a relationship with the Eibishter and understand the Eibishter, who the Eibishter is, right? So the Chassid came to the Samach Tzedek saying, or whoever it was that said he doesn't know that there's an Eibishter. So he asked him, do you know if there's a Zar? So he said, of course I know there's a Zar. He says, how do you know if there's a Zar? He says, because my brother does a lot of business and he's gone to Petersburg and he's met up with all the big knockers, the aristocracy over there, and they tell about the Tsar. So then Al says, aha, that's how you know there's a Tsar. He says, believe me, I know there's an Eibishter. Right? But the Taka of Samach Tzedek, he can believe him. There's an Eibishter. But good for him. Right? The Tzadikim, that experience, and for sure the others that the Gemara says that that they were able to experience it on the highest of levels. But for us, the Gilui, that we don't have that Gilui, right? We don't get to experience and know the Eibishter on this level. So in that regard, says the Rebbe, the avoid of about Shuv, in this regard, any Yid that does a mitzvah today is really going against the nature. What relationship with what? With who? What are you having a relationship with? Not only that, some people have tinus to the Eibishter. October 7th. How you talking? You want me to have a relationship with Hazah Eibishter? I don't like this person. I go out with a person, I date them, I don't like them, I don't marry them. I'm forced into a relationship I don't like? That sounds abusive. So on some level, when we do, it's a much greater doing. That doing of the Mesiras Nefesh type of doing, so to speak, of the Mesiras Nefesh or the Avodah of the Baalei Tshuva or the Kabbalah cells on a much, much, much more greater level. And we see it within human experience. So the baseline Ava may be in a very, very high level. But Avraham Avinu experienced the level of Oisa Emes, Mipnei Shu Emes. There was nothing about himself involved in it at all. It wasn't that I'm doing something, the Yesh Mi She'oyev, as we know the Chassidus talks about. I'm the one who loves. It was the truth, so he did the truth. End of story. So says the Rebbe, when it comes to Avraham Avinu, the fact that Avraham Avinu brings down that Avraham Avinu was also at some point held back from doing his avodah. So it caused him pain. Why did it cause him pain? Because this is not what he wants to do. He doesn't want to be held back in his avodah. right? That's not what he wanted to do. Avraham Avinu didn't want to do that. Avraham Avinu wanted to be able to do his avodah. What's his avodah? Spread Yiddishkeit. Likewise, the Frierdiker Rebbe, what was the whole kol-kuli of the Frierdiker Rebbe? What was his whole mission in life? To spread Yiddishkeit. So when you're locked up in prison, the greatest pain is you can't do your job. There's no greater pain than that. That's why he felt the pain. The Rebbe continues in the theme of that. But going back to the Sikha before that, I said, the Rebbe there explains that there's one way you could do an avodah. You could serve the Eibishter. You could do your shluchus. And it's sort of, it's something that you're doing because you see the purpose in it. You appreciate the purpose in it. It has meaning to you. For some people, they have today born from birth, right? You're brought up religious. You're brought up with Torah mitzvahs. So either you have a feeling, you don't have a feeling for it. But al kopanim, you will know what it's about. You have some experience, maybe. It's a mistake, by the way. Some people think that because they were brought up, the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, they have to know what to tell a person who's an apikotis. An apikotis is someone who denies, whatever, simple pshat. Apikotis is someone who denies that the Eibishter gave the Torah, mitzvahs, and all that. So the Gemara there says, Rabbi Yochanan says, that's talking about goyim. Apikotis is talking about a goy. But by a yid, don't get into the conversation with him. The pakri tvei. What does it mean, the pakri tvei? So Rashi there says, because he thinks he's already experienced it all. So whatever you're going to tell him, he's going to come up with another answer to fight you on it. Right? Sometimes we think we've experienced Yiddishkeit because we were brought up in it. So we know what it's all about. But we've never really matured in our Yiddishkeit. We've never really taken it serious. We've never really opened the book and studied it and meditated on it and actually practiced it with a feeling. It's just been, we grow up that way, so we stay that way. So if I was brought up Amish, I'll be Amish. I was brought up a Jew, I'm a Jew. And I'm not taking away Chas v'Shalom Adarav, like we said before, on some level that's even a higher level. But at the same time, there's a certain element of where a person could be serving the Eibishter and their feeling of the connection is not there at all. Mitzvahs anashim ulumad. I was brought up a certain way, so I do it that way. Why do I do it? I don't think twice about it. Or if I think twice about it, I get scared, so I shut it down and I keep on going. Then there are people that actually they actually do get connected on some level. And there's moments, we all have moments when we feel connected, whether it's a Yom Kippur, a Ne'ilah, whether it's other times, a birthday, Hasidus, Milamayla, whatever it may be, there's times that we feel a certain connection to the Eibishter and Torah mitzvahs. And that's a very fleeting experience by most of us. It doesn't really last very long. But there's a feeling, we do feel some connection to the Eibishter. And those times, those feelings drive us, they motivate us, they energize us, they make us feel, involved. Once, one of my Talmidim, after he was finished davening, he says, I had such a geschmack of davening today. I can eat a horse for breakfast. So I said, if that's what you're feeling is, Mistam is nicht gedaven, that's really good. If you leave davening feeling like now you're hungry, that you can eat a horse, is Mistam, that's not the experience of davening of Shifri Kamayim Livech Ad Mitzi HaNefesh. But anyway, the point is sometimes we have, there's a Chassidus talks about the Nyein Shav, whatever it is, we're not going to get into all of the different types of relationships we can have with the Eibishter, but there's different experiences we could all have, and some of them talk it, but it all comes from a place, a lot of them, most of them, come from a place that I feel good about it. And when I feel good about it, I'm involved, and I'm not. Today, in the world we live in today, the psycho-conscious age that we live in today, everybody talks about it. You have to do what you're interested in and like doing, right? If you like it, you do it. If you don't like it, don't do it, because then it's traumatic for you. We spoke about this Shabbos Shuvah, that the Rebbe said that the problem with this generation is, and instead of asking vos, they ask farvos, right? Everything is why, and we have to understand it, we have to explain it. The idea of doing something, the Rebbe says, why did he start Tzivus Hashem? Is because he was trying to think to himself, what could be something that, what could he design? Someone was asking, a psychologist wrote into the Rebbe, why are you making children as if they're in an army? Right? My children run around, they're excited about the Israelis. So he says this idea is not healthy for children. So the Rebbe says, I thought long and hard about it. He says, but there's only one model that I could think of that children should be educated in is the way they educate you in the army. They don't give you reasons. You do. Now, I'm not going to get into now the whole psychology about people who struggle with it. What I'm saying is that there's a sense that we have, okay, if I feel it, that means it's a raya, it's true. If you feel it, it's a raya, it's true. If I don't feel it, it's a raya, it's not true. No, when you feel it, it means you feel yourself. The only truth that you're acknowledging is the fact that you feel yourself. You know you exist. I think, therefore I am. I feel, therefore I think the relationship is true. You know, it's when you have your young child, your 2-year-old or 1-year-old or your infant child that wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning screaming. You don't say, now I'm really being a good parent. I push it feel so geschmack right now. You get out of bed with Azaz Rizus and Achayis, you push it can't fall back asleep afterwards from such excitement. It's usually not the way it works. So it's not the feeling that counts in that sense. Again, there's dargis here, you know. So there's some people, the way they serve the Eibusher, the way they connect to the Eibusher, the way, it's dependent on their moods. It's dependent on their feelings. And when it's dependent on your feeling, it's dependent on the way you feel about something, so then you're not fully engaged in the relationship. You know, if you tell your wife, you know, today I'm not really interested in our relationship, you know, let's take a break. I'm not feeling it today. Or your wife tells you, I'm not feeling it today. Or you tell your son, you know, today I'm not really feeling connected to you. I mean, these ideas just sound ridiculous, right? Comes along Avraham Avinu, comes along the Frierdiker Rebbe and tells us and teaches us that what's the true avodah of serving the Eibusher is not about you at all. It's not about you. It's about the inyan, the thing that has to happen. This is ani nivreisi l'shamish eskaini, or ani loy nivreisi elo l'shamish eskaini. I'm here for one purpose. It's very hard to fathom this idea. You know, we hear it a lot. We hear it a lot. You know, my father-in-law's lying gesund. He was going to speak. I think I've shared this here in the past. He was going to speak in Oli Torah asked him to speak for the Masifta Bachram a number of years ago. So he was trying to think, how is he going to connect to the Masifta Bachram? Some of you know he's a good koyach hapet to explain chassidus and things like that. You know, to Masifta Bachram, what is he going to tell him? So he was thinking about it, so he came up with a very good idea. He said he's going to explain to them how even if you don't necessarily appreciate chassidus, you've been pickling your chassidus for a long time. Watch it, the thing seeps into your bones. You've been pickling it for years, right? You've been sitting and learning it. Somehow it seeps in on some level. So all of us have been, you know, it seeped into us this consciousness of the idea of, you know, doing avodah and it's about not about you, it's about the avodah. A lot of these ideas, so to speak, you know, we heard it already, you know. But let's think about it for a second. What does that mean? What does it mean to have a relationship with the Eibusher on a level that it's not about how you feel, and you do it because you know this is the right thing? Like waking up 3 o'clock in the morning because your baby is crying. You don't think about, oh, this is the right thing to do right now, therefore I'm doing it. The Rebbe Rashab talks in Kuntas Atila. He says that there's different levels in davening. You start off, and there's certain levels in days, and Bas Pad B'Shalom Tafrei Samaches, he talks about it more about Arichas, that you start off the day, the first level is a nafshi level. You don't feel that connected, right? You wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? You want to go back to sleep. You're not really interested in anything when you wake up in the morning, right? And from there evolves eventually some level of ruach where you start feeling a certain emotional attachment, etc., etc., etc. But if you don't get past the nafshi, if you don't get into the nafshi sticker level, the moidani, the very beginning level, say I got to do this because this is me, regardless of how I feel about it, then you'll never get to the next level. That means the yesod and the foundation is that it's not about me. So says the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, that was the Frierdiker Rebbe's experience. And the Rebbe says that was the experience of all the people that were Mesiras Nefesh with the Frierdiker Rebbe. The reason why they're able to experience such a level of Avaya Liba Oizri, the idea of Yamidis Imatzoi, why could they experience? Because there was nothing of themselves in it. They weren't doing it because of any personal satisfaction. There's a Maimer of the Rebbe on Parshas Mishpatim where he goes through many levels of Shaloi Lishma. Some of us will think those levels of Shaloi Lishma are Mamish Lishma. And the Rebbe goes from one level to the other, showing you how none of those they're still Shaloi Lishma. It's still about yourself. Even if you're doing it l'shem to connect to the Eibishter, that's still shalei l'shma. Oysa emes beish emes is a whole different level. L'shem yichud kutchabrichu shechinte is also shalei l'shma according to that. L'shem yichud kutchabrichu shechinte is also shalei l'shma according to that. Which in other words means that when we want to have a proper pool, a poil mamish, what does this mean for us? We're not in a we're in a different space on some levels, and a different country, and a different reality, different time. But in many ways, there's elements of what the Frierdiker Rebbe was fighting against or fighting for that we're dealing with today. And that's basic Yiddishkeit, basic Torah mitzvahs, basic Judaism, kashrus, tefillin, Shabbos. These are things that ein bayish ein boy v'chulu. We all know that these are the basic things that we're all fighting against, that we're all trying to hold up to. And we want to be able to be mevasas a kehila, to establish a community, to establish our lives and our children's lives, to be able to educate them, to be able to make them into to give them the approach, to give them the levels of connection that we want them to connect to. We want them to be able to feel a certain kesher, a certain connection to the emes. So what does that require from us? What does that demand from us? Dos monzich. Dos monzich is get yourself out of the way. It's not about you. We don't pass on to Yiddishkeit to our children because that's the way we were brought up. We pass on Yiddishkeit to our children because that's the emes. And there's a very big difference between the two. If we pass on Yiddishkeit because that's the way we were brought up, that's called a fear. You're doing it because you don't know anything else. And you're afraid to shake the boat. If you're passing it on because it's emes, your child will see it's emes. And how do they see when it's emes? Because you get out of the way. And collectively, when we all have that, there's no personal natias. It's not about what I want. It's about the inyan. Then you have you have the level of amitas imotzi of einay muvate, and then it's not mesiras nefesh anymore. See, it's mesiras nefesh when there's still episode zich there. There's still some self in it. There's still something there. That's why the Rebbe says in the Ma'arav Tetzaveh that the Yidden that after Russia, after they left, they could go back. Why? Because it never really transformed them. There was still always a zich. There was always an eye. There was something there. That's not what the Rebbe demands from us. The Rebbe demands from us a koyach atzmi. It's not about us. Shlichus, going out in the world doesn't mean that a person gets involved in something because he's going to build an empire. How many people is he going to bring into his Chabad house? That's not the purpose of shlichus. I'm not saying that, at the beginning with maybe I need the Shmina Shebeshminis. You could have this on Sicha the Rebbe where it discusses whether we hold of the Shmina Shebeshminis or not. Right? The Gemara says that you need to have the 1/16 of Yeshus to get it going, right? Maybe, but for those who need it, fine. But the point is that that's not the vision. That's not the purpose. The purpose is not where am I going to become something. It's about the inning that has to happen. So Mamela, taking the lessons from Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz, and as we said before, it's this year, Vahi B'Shleishim Shana, the koiches that we have, the inyan of Shira. The idea of Shira is inyan of Ratzi V'Shoiv. Ratzi V'Shoiv, the Alter Rebbe explains in Perek Nun of Tanya that Ratzi V'Shoiv is the idea of where a person realizes that it's not just about running away and getting excited, but when he reaches that excitement, shuv, got to do peil mamish. You got to act on it. You can sit by a Farbrengen and you can say, wow, that was brilliant. You feel inspired. But if you don't do anything, if there's no peil mamish from it, if you don't see this as truth, then it's all ratzui. And ratzui takes you nowhere. The ratzui has to lead to shuv, otherwise the ratzui wasn't an emes ratzui. And that's shira. There's minors and majors. Minor notes and major notes. You need to have that interplay between both. Mamela, this year, on this Yom Tif, by Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz, we're empowered. And this is the most important factor that we have to really realize. We're empowered, and that's the Maimer of the Rebbe says in the Maimer of the Tzava. The fact that the Tzemach Tzedek was able to tell us that what the Alter Rebbe used to say periodically or very often, Ich will nicht dein Gan Eden, ich will nicht dein Olam Haba, ich will nur dich allein, that means we can all demand that. That means we could all sense the truth. We could all be living a life of truth, not because it's how it feels, not because we understand so much. That's also good. Adarabah. But no, it's the truth. And pass it on because it's the truth. And when we live in that realm, then we have the ultimate Barucheinu and the ultimate Gula Mitzvah Shleim L'chaim.
Sitzen auf der Jahre früher, weil wir lachten betäubt bei mir, we able to work together. Alles hat gewisses